All right, welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relive with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your humble, gracious host, Richie Mars, and thank you for clicking on this latest episode that you're listening to on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And again, this week, we're going to SummerSlam. But, of course, I can't talk about SummerSlam without doing a SummerSlam episode. And this is 25 years ago. This happened today. SummerSlam main event, 1999. And it's one of those lost main events that's like in a time capsule and period of time where it's like there were a lot of things that were happening, but you want to talk about the pivot that happened in WrestleMania 40. This is the pivot if it would had scoliosis, because we had Jesse the Body Ventura, who was the governor at the time of Minnesota, and you have Stone Cold Steve Austin defending the WWE Championship against Triple H and Mankind. But it's not so simple how we got there. But something that is monumental like this, I couldn't do alone. I had to call my friend, my frequent collaboration partner on these episodes, Mr. Seth. How are we doing today?
Richie, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, when you reached out to me and you said, let's get some pods done, and I'm like, you know what? I have a pod idea that I feel like you would be perfect for since you were watching this in real time. So, SummerSlam 1999, but we're going to go back a little bit further, of course, with the build and everything like that. But let's go when it was announced that Jesse the Body Ventura was announced as the special guest for SummerSlam. What was your reaction to it? And did it come out of left field, in your opinion?
Oh, I mean, listen, it's Jesse the Body Ventura. You know, Jesse the Body Ventura. Actor, politician. Former wrestler. Obviously not in the Hall of Fame at this point. Still not on the best of terms with WWE. But dude, it's Jesse the Body. You know, former former referee from the original WrestleMania. I'm sorry, SummerSlam. His name is in the headlines as governor of Minnesota. Did it come out of the field a little bit? Was I upset? No, because it's Jesse the Body
Now,
Predator.
now there's a kind of, I wouldn't say like controversy, but there's a lot of different talking points of why Jesse decided to accept his WWE, back then WWF, appearance. And of course, the big denominator is money. He got a lot of money for this event. He claimed he was going to donate $100,000 to charity, but that $100,000 was reportedly not all he got paid. He got paid probably in the seven figures. So that is the talking point that is about this appearance. But also a couple weeks earlier was the unfortunate Owen Hart tragedy that happened. And he was very vocal about the problems with WWF and wrestlers not having a union. Of course, that being the main reason why he left WWF in the first place. And this happened in a whole 6 weeks of time. That was the span. Now hearing all this information, do you think like, yeah, money talks, or is it just kind of like what do you think about Jesse kind of coming back here? Because he also had a problem with WCW and Hulk Hogan too, so it seems like he hates Hogan more than the McMahon at this point.
I mean, listen, I've never, and I say this every time I'm on your show, I've never been in the Titan Sports offices. I've never been up to meet with Vince and the crew. I've never been in the locker room to speak to the wrestlers. So, I have no knowledge on any of this. That's, primary source wise. Everything is obviously, stuff that I've read online and, take it for what it's worth. But, listen, Jesse's a celebrity. Like all celebrities that come into any WWF event, whether it's WrestleMania, SummerSlam, they all get paid, and they all get paid nicely. So, I'm not surprised to hear that he got paid in the seven figures. I'm sure I'm sure they didn't reach out to him, ask him to come in and have him. I'm sure he didn't say yes on the first try.
Right.
Like you just said, things. It always seemed like when he left, first of all, and again, when you have to go back, and I don't know how far back, your wrestling goes. but I mean, he left WWF as a commentator, in the early '90s, and went to WCW, pre Nitro era, right, maybe just on the verge of
Mhm.
it. You know, I'd say '92, maybe '92, '93. So clearly, these were the days when guys left. There was obviously bad vibes, um, you know, on one or both
Mhm.
ends. Um, Especially with the way the competition was starting to gain ground against WWF at the time. So you know, but at the same time, now here we are, 1999, and Jesse's not with WCW anymore. You know, he's obviously not happy with them either. He doesn't seem like he's very happy with the entire wrestling business at this point. So yeah, I'm sure, when they reached out to him, it definitely involved some kind of a payday. Wouldn't surprise me.
Now, one of the biggest parts, other than Jesse Ventura, during this time was the rise of your guy, Triple H. This was
Triple H.
during his ascent into the
Mm-hmm.
main event scene. And the week that this was announced that Ventura would be either the special guest referee or the special
Mm-hmm.
attraction for SummerSlam, it they it was right before the fully loaded pay-per-view itself. And there was
Mm-hmm.
something that happened on the Sunday Night Heat edition of that show that was very pivotal in Triple H's career, and that is "I Am the Game" promo.
Yep.
Now, was this, in your opinion, as you're watching live, the turning point of Triple H's career? Did you know that was happening, or did you think it was like, man, that was a great promo?
Well, I mean, so if you go back, I mean, this was, he had, he had just turned his back on DX, basically, rejoined with China, who had turned against him, prior, you know, a year earlier. He's now got his, he's joined up, with the corporation at the time, and he's getting his singles run now. Um, you know, this is the first time where he's a single star. He's not in the group, like DX anymore. He's this promo, man. I'll tell you, you want to talk about the game? I am the effing game, Jr. I mean, that's a classic promo at the time. Did I think it? Probably not. You know, but I've gone back on YouTube these days and I've watched it countless times.
Now, you and I, we've been critical of like when wrestlers pull back the curtain a little bit too much in their promos. And
Yes.
something that was pulled back here was the curtain call, which is famously what Triple H got punished with because Shawn was the champion.
Yep.
Diesel and Razor were going to WCW, and Triple H was his push was delayed a year, so to speak.
Yes.
Now, did you think at the time while you were reviewing this, did you know what the curtain call was? Did you think it was an unnecessary thing to bring up, or did you think it was the right event to kickstart Triple H's character?
So we're going back to this time, and this is still the early days of getting wrestling on the internet. It's not, it's a lot more readily available. I think we could all agree
Right.
today. Um, you know, and this, I was not at that Madison Square Garden house show, but I know people who were there. That's how I found out about it.
Mm.
You know, I didn't hear about it. I didn't read about it online. I had friends that were there. We're like, dude, you'll never believe what happened. So here we are. You know, early 20s. Be like, dude, no way. And he's starting to realize this stuff that goes on, and hey, he's a bad guy, but they're friends, and he's a good guy, and they're friends. Like, you're realizing now at this point that obviously, it's not, stuff's not all it seems. And a couple of years earlier, you had the whole Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Iron Sheik arrest, where they were, busted together in a car. And wait a second, they're supposed to be feuding with each other,
Right.
and here they are driving to an event together. So the curtain had started getting pulled back a little earlier. Um, and you're starting to realize, kayfabe, as we call it now, is kind of just that. It's not, these guys were all friends behind the scene, and you're starting to realize that. Um, the details about the curtain call at Madison Square Garden came obviously later, for me, but I do remember, you know, Triple H, all of a sudden finding himself in a feud with um, Henry Godwin, and he was in a lot of those slot matches, at the time. Um, but I don't remember. Again, I didn't. If you would have told me, did I know his push was going to be delayed a year? No, I had no idea. I mean, to me, it was like, oh, who knew? But listen, things happen for a reason, and everything. Let's put it this way: Triple H did not win King of the Ring that year.
Mm-hmm.
But, who did win King of the Ring in 1996?
And I was about to segue to him, so thank you
Yeah,
for the perfect segue to
that's all. I gave that
yeah,
to you,
Stone
man.
Cold Steve Austin. He's the
Yeah,
WWF champion at the time. And let's talk about his match at
yeah.
Fully Loaded. And I remember because I had the Undertaker DVD and this match was featured on that.
Mhm.
And for a long time, this video package turned this into like one of my favorite matches. Even though Stone Cold and Taker, they didn't have the best chemistry with each other, I would love this first blood match so much.
Mhm.
And do you remember the stipulation of this first blood match?
The stipulation? No, I do not.
So if Stone Cold loses, he can never again attempt to challenge the WWF Championship. And
Yes.
if Undertaker loses, we will never see Vince McMahon in WWF again.
Again. Yes.
So
Yes.
it took about 25 years, but so far we have not seen we
Yes.
have not seen Vince McMahon again.
But they did play into that though a little
Mhm.
bit. Um, they did play into that a little bit with the build for this match too, as we'll get to it a little bit as well.
Did you
So
think at the time watching that Vince was actually going to step away from television?
no, no, especially with and we were just talking about this before with the way like the title was like hot potato titles back then, and you know, it was episodic TV, and the way things changed every single week. Stipulations were erased every week.
Mhm.
I mean, you thought maybe he'd take a couple weeks. I didn't think he'd be gone forever. You know, but again, they were keeping it
Mhm.
interesting. Listen, Austin McMahon was the top feud for how long? Got to keep it interesting somehow.
So, speaking of interesting, let's get to this build,
Mhm.
shall we? So, Triple
Yeah,
H
man.
wins the strap match against The Rocket Fully Loaded to become the number one
Hmm.
contender for Stone Cold's WWF Championship, which
Hmm.
should take place at SummerSlam. So, we have Stone Cold versus Triple H. Should be as simple as that, right?
Should be.
Let's throw a little bit of a wrench in that plan. So, on Raw, Steve wasn't on the show, but we had Jesse Ventura having his promo. He was talking
Mhm.
about Navy SEALs and talking a lot about that.
Yep.
Good for him, and then Triple H interrupts, and then that whole chicanery happened. So we're building Jesse as the special guest referee for this important
Hmm.
championship match. However, during the night, it was announced that Steve Austin would face Triple H and Undertaker in a triple threat match. I don't recall if this was for the championship or this was just cuz.
I think it was just
Yeah,
cause.
shocking.
Yeah.
So during
Episodic
yeah,
TV.
that's what you got to do. Got to keep the viewers drawn in. But of course, with
Mhm.
episodic TV, you have chicanery involved. Steve Austin is attacked backstage. We don't know who attacked him, but
1999 was not a good year for Austin getting attacked backstage, huh?
nope. We might get to that later. So
Yeah.
then we have a triple threat match, but this time for the number one contendership for the WWF Championship with Triple H, Undertaker, and China, made by Commissioner Shawn Michaels. So, for
Hmm.
those of you who are playing at home, we have Steve Austin, Jesse Ventura, Undertaker, Triple H, China, and Shawn Michaels,
Yes.
all within the story so far.
Yes.
So, Mr. Seth.
And I think it's important to note that by this point, Commissioner Michaels had become a fan favorite
Mhm.
again, unlike when he first became a commissioner and he was with the corporation.
Yep. So we have a
And
lot
they
of lot of different elements here so far, but it
yes,
came to this moment of Triple H's newly won number one contendership on the line against China and The Undertaker.
yes.
So, Mr. Seth, seems like a lot of things that they just did just to get to this moment. Couldn't there have been like a simpler path that you think, or do you think because of the time period, you had to make it a little bit like you had to be on your toes?
Well, I mean, listen, and you have a number of weeks between Fully Loaded and SummerSlam. Remember, you know this is not when today where SummerSlam is the first week in August. Back then, SummerSlam was always the last Sunday in August.
Mm-hmm.
So you had basically the entire summer with TV you got to fill.
Mm.
So back then you'd get stuff like this all the time, twists and turns. Hey, listen, it keeps you interested, right?
And
How you gonna promote, Triple H and Stone Cold every single week for the entire summer? So you need some twists and turns,
well, there's a lot of unnecessary
and we're not
twists
even
and
there yet.
turns.
Yeah,
We're
no,
not even like this is just scraping the
because we got
surface.
some pieces. We just have some pieces that we still haven't even announced
Yeah,
yet.
so we have China, Triple H, Undertaker in this number one contendership match. And again, the end goal is Austin versus Triple H.
Hmm.
China then wins the number one contendership, pinning Triple H. And of course, those two are a
Hmm.
duo at this time. And Undertaker's out of the story from here on out.
Yes.
Because with Undertaker, he's going to form a team with the Big Show. Which
Hmm.
seems cool for Big Show, right?
Big Show needed it, right? This was supposed to be a pretty good, pretty good team. If I remember correctly, Undertaker was, almost like mentoring him,
Yep.
you
And
know,
this was
and
actually a
then
punishment to the Big Show, if you want to call it
yes,
that, because he wasn't delivering the goods.
right, he wasn't disciplined.
Yep. So imagine, like, here's your punishment. You're going to be a tag team partner to the Undertaker.
Dude, he's gonna be your mentor. He's gonna teach
Mhm.
you.
So
I can't think of a better person to learn from.
yeah, exactly. And I think it worked out well for Big Show.
Yeah, of course, let's not forget this was right before the Undertaker
Mhm.
disappeared and eventually came back, a few months later as the American Badass.
Correct. And I feel like this story is going to have more twists and turns than Big Show face and heel turns.
In which company?
So now we got China as the number one contender. Now, when you're watching this happen live on
Hmm.
television, did you think for realsies that China was going to be facing Steve Austin at SummerSlam?
No, not at all.
Why do you think that?
Um, just I because it's your second biggest show of the
Mhm.
year, and I can't see Stone Cold Steve Austin and China as the main event of SummerSlam, and just that's just me. Even back then, to me, I'm like, what's going to sell out the arena, and that's a great listen. Listen, she was wrestling the guys. She'll eventually become intercontinental champion,
Mhm. And she was
right?
over too.
Yeah, she was. Hey, listen, they say what you want about Vince and some of his crazy ideas over the years, but dude, back then having China wrestling with the guys, there are companies now that are just starting to do that.
Yeah.
They were ahead of their time back then
Mhm.
with China wrestling the guys. You know,
Now, did you think China wrestling the guys should have just been left as a special attraction, or did you think now that we're doing this week by week that we kind of have to like promote
well,
her as such?
you're gonna have to find one badass woman to be able to beat her
Hmm.
because here she is throwing guys around. And back then, if you remember, a lot of the women, were a lot of them were bikini
Right.
models. You know, um, not this was still 1999. We haven't really seen the leaders and the Trish Stratuses yet. So right, they were just on the horizon because that's
Yeah,
2000.
correct. So she was like the prominent woman that was featured
Yeah.
as the in-ring talent. When you had Sable, you had all those
Yep.
other divas, if you want to use that term, that were more
Sorry.
in that division. But China was the first one to actually be presented as an equal to
Yeah.
the male counterparts.
Yeah.
So China's number one contender. Austin's
For
still
now.
kind of out, and Triple H,
Mm-hmm.
he's not very happy.
Nope.
So logically, what do? You have China put up her number one contendership against Triple H.
Triple H
So
makes sense.
obviously, you would have, all right, we had the shock moment, China's number one contender. So this is the place where you give Triple H back the contendership, right?
You would think.
Wrong. Because
Uh,
Mankind, who was taken out by a sledgehammer by Triple H, returns and
fuck
costs
you.
Triple H the match against
The
China.
match. Mm-hmm.
Now, at this point, Mankind, he's about a year removed from that Hell in a Cell spot. He's about 6 months removed from ending his feud with The Rock. And the
Mm-hmm.
landscape of WWF has totally changed at this point.
Oh yeah. Listen, remember Triple H was still in DX when they went to the ring to help Mankind celebrate, you know, a few months earlier when he had won the championship against The Rock. That was DX. That was that was the Outlaws and Triple H and X Pac
Mhm.
that were celebrating with Mankind that night in Massachusetts. So things have definitely changed.
Now, do you think, as the viewer, did you think that this was happening like a lot of things were just happening so quick with character changes or anything? Or did you think, like, oh, yeah, that makes sense why this would happen?
Well, I mean, but was it really? I mean, other than the recent, Triple H heel turn against DX at WrestleMania that year. I mean, what other character changes? There weren't really too many character changes. Maybe some pivots in the stories, you know. But I mean, who else changed character? Nobody else really changed
Well, I mean,
characters.
just like the heel to babyface placement. You had The Rock turn
Mhm.
babyface.
But he's not involved
You
in
had
this,
Mankind, who's
and,
fresh off the Union, and they're disbanded at this
right?
point. Just a lot of stories that were just kind of like just quickly done.
But you know what though? You had listen. You're building a lot of
Mhm.
stars, and you got a lot of guys that need TV
Right.
time, right? I mean, we're about to see. We're not that far away from the Rock and Sock connection either.
Correct.
So I mean, there's a lot of good things are on the horizon
Mhm.
here. Um, you know, um, and as we're about to see with you know Mick Foley coming back or Mankind coming back, it's going to throw a little bit of a wrench into the situation, huh?
Oh, that is not a wrench. That is a that is an entire toolbox that's being
Yeah,
thrown into this situation. So,
because again, China didn't just go continue her path to SummerSlam. No, no. What happened next, Rich?
next week we have Mankind get a shot at the number one contendership against China.
Makes sense.
Yeah, again, the end goal is Stone Cold versus Triple H, and right now Triple
Mm-hmm.
H ain't nowhere near the number one contendership.
No, he's not.
So we had Mankind defeat China to get that number one contendership.
But she don't forget, Mankind defeated China. Which, by the way, now again, talk about WWE being ahead of their
Mhm.
time. I mean, dude, this that was a physical match, Mankind and China
Mhm.
too. If you go back and watch it,
Mankind was bumping
you
all
know,
over the place.
yeah, she was kicking. She was legit kicking his
And this is
ass.
a man who just
And he was
got
hitting
done
back.
from knee surgery too.
Yeah, and he was again. It's not like he was taking it easy on her either.
Mhm.
She was taking some bumps as well. But you left out the fact that China lost because she got a little distracted by Triple H coming down to ringside.
Triple H
A
making
little
his
Triple H
presence known.
distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
and
Triple H not being
the
quiet.
thing is during this whole time, they're still a duo. They're still a unit,
Yeah.
which is usually like when like this is like in terms of wrestling, like clear signs of one's going to turn on the other, but that never happens. Do you
No.
think that's a missed story opportunity that they did?
You know, we're not. Listen, this is 1999, right?
Mhm.
So let's not forget what's going to happen in the fall of that year. You know, there's going to be a wedding in Vegas in that
Right.
fall in 1999. So, I mean, on one end, we are near the end of the Triple H and China
Mhm.
union, but no, it doesn't seem, it was never really paid off. They just kind of went their separate
Mhm.
ways,
Did,
almost like they grew
did you
apart.
think
It's not you. It's not you. It's
yeah.
me.
Did you think that was a kind of like a missed opportunity from a storytelling perspective?
You would think because right, listen, China was such an integral part with DX, and China and Triple H were
Mhm.
connected. So yeah, it was a little odd that they just went their separate ways. She went off and did her thing. Getting involved. Um, with sexual chocolate.
Mhm.
And Eddie Guerrero and the Intercontinental title down the road with Chris Jericho. And then you're gonna have Triple H. Like I said, he's gonna DX will eventually reform. Without China, and you're gonna see the beginning of the McMahon Helmsley era as again we have a destination wedding in
Yeah.
Vegas. You know,
We gotta
with the
we gotta
virtuous
rewind from
Stephanie
that a little
McMahon.
bit because we still have this story to
We're gonna
go
have to.
to.
Yeah, we're gonna have to. Like I said, we're gonna have to maybe do a whole episode just on that.
Yeah. Well,
We
yeah.
should, Richie. We should just to celebrate their 25th anniversary.
You know what? Now that I'm hearing about it, we're gonna talk and we're gonna
Yeah,
record that in the future.
yeah, yeah. That's a coming
Yeah,
attraction.
because Seth, I'm not sure you heard, I did a 3.5 hour podcast on the Authority,
Oh well,
and I'm kind of Triple
wait,
H and Stephanie out right now.
not a problem. But we'll sidebar this conversation until we celebrate the 25th anniversary of that union. When we talk about their wedding in
I got
Vegas
a couple
later
months
this.
to recover, so
Yep,
that's more than enough
no
time in my
problem.
book.
No problem.
But
So
we still have a number one contender to be crowned. Now, Seth, usually when the number one contender is crowned, they are just that. They are the number one contender.
true.
Now, during these weeks,
Oh,
what is your thoughts on the number one contendership seemingly every week being on the line?
sorry. Well, not for nothing. Mankind was the number one contender for all of 5 minutes. So, because it wasn't until after that match that Shane came down and basically said, no, we're gonna have a match between you, Mankind, and Triple H. To determine the number one contender. So now China's out altogether.
Yeah, well, what
You
is up
know,
with that? Because it's like it's
end goal is Stone Cold and Triple
yeah,
H. So
but there's a main element that's not really being talked about in the Stone Cold and Triple H feud, right?
yeah,
Stone Cold.
yeah, very. It's like we're taking the long route to the mall today. We're going through neighborhoods and weaving around the streets.
And the mall's just right next door. We're going through the
Yeah,
we're doing donuts in the parking lot right now. We're going through
we're,
the
we're
forest.
doing a 45-minute drive for a 5-minute trip to the mall.
Christmas. But
Yeah.
again, let's talk about that match that Shane made, which was Triple H versus
hmm
Mankind for the number one contendership for the
Which
WWF Championship.
and let's not forget Shawn Michaels was involved in this too.
Yep, because Shawn and Shane were both referees, right?
Yes.
And the finish was Mandible Claw.
Mm-hmm.
Triple H had Mankind in a back suplex. And I believe they landed on a chair, correct?
They landed on a chair, but they landed on a chair, but they both had their arms on each
Correct.
other.
And that cost.
So Mankind had an arm. Mankind had an arm on Triple H. Triple H had an arm on Mankind. Shawn Michaels counts 1, 2, 3 as Mankind pins Triple H. Shane counts 1, 2, 3 as Triple H and his arm pins Mankind. They both signal for the bell. They both raise the other guy's hand, and then they stare at each other and they do the point, and they say, "I counted the 3." No, I counted the 3. And now that's just the perfect setup for not just Stone Cold versus Triple H, but now we have a 3-way dance with Mankind involved as well. And this is where things are going to get a little more wonky.
Seth, I'm exhausted. It's only
It's
it's only a half hour in.
And it's almost like it was like, all right, we originally booked this to be Triple H versus Stone Cold, but hey, guess who just got cleared? And we need to put Mankind on the SummerSlam card somehow. I don't know. Should we make him a ref? Can't make him a ref. We already have Jesse Ventura.
So I'm gonna go with a couple theories that were going on with why this was
Yeah,
a
man.
triple threat match. Now the
Go
one
for it.
theory is Steve Austin was, he was still feeling the effects of that Owen Hart pile driver at this point.
From the year before,
Yeah, so it's like he had like a bunch of different like injuries that he wanted to recover from. So they thought that
Mhm.
adding Mankind into the match would probably lessen his like the pressure of him trying to create a SummerSlam main event caliber match with Triple H and have the right moment
Sure.
for passing that torch. I just find it a little bit curious of hey, this guy's just coming back from knee surgery.
Yeah.
Let's throw him into this high pressured situation.
Again, we got to get Mankind on the card somehow. Let's make it a triple threat match.
And then the other one rumor that was speculated at the time, which I don't really believe, is that Stone Cold didn't want to put Triple H over in a clean one-on-one match.
hmm
and because he thought Triple H wasn't ready yet.
Now that one again, I've heard that one recently. I don't remember hearing that at the time, but I've heard that recently. Um, but from everything again, I I said it before. I'll say it again. I'm not in the locker
Mhm.
room. I don't speak. I've never had a conversation with any of these guys about this, so I have no idea if that's the case. Hey, listen, you can't, based on what we've learned, at times, Shawn Michaels, sorry, at times, Stone Cold, you know, did has shown that he didn't like the way things were going. I mean, that time he took his ball, and went home a couple of years later. So,
Allegedly,
I mean,
not
yeah,
not
allegedly,
allegedly, but it actually did happen.
but so I mean, like I said, I don't know if that's true. Hey, I have no idea. If it's not true, I have no
I actually
idea.
found out the
You know?
genesis of that Stone Cold Brock Lesnar pitch.
Oh
So
yeah.
Brian Gewirtz, he wrote a book. There's just one problem with that. So he wrote in that book that Vince wanted a really strong match for Raw, and
hmm
Gewirtz pitched Brock Lesnar versus Stone Cold. And Vince said, "Oh, that's strong, pal." And now, usually, when Vince would say that, according to Gewirtz, was that strong, like too strong for the show, or strong as in that's a good idea. And from the Stone Cold perspective, I think you and I, we both understand that having a Raw match kind of thrown away on a paper on a Raw that should be like a
You're
WrestleMania
losing a payday.
main event
Yeah.
isn't the way to go. And how Gewirtz kind of defends this is that this would be the schmaz where Eddie Guerrero would cost Stone Cold the match, and
hmm
then when that eventual Steve Austin Brock Lesnar match finally happens, they could advertise it as their first time ever match, even though that's not entirely true. What are your thoughts on that kind of concept of that Steve Austin Brock Lesnar match happening on Raw and the ending being kind of a schmaz?
I mean, listen, we do see that today a lot.
Yeah.
You know, so I understand from again, you have to get the eyes on your TV product. You know, as a viewer, I'm going to tune
hmm
in. You know, on Raw tonight, Stone Cold and Brock, I'm watching. On their end, hey, we'll give them a schmaz, and this way, it's like we're teasing them. So hey, they'll see how good this could be, and then one day we'll get this on a big card. I can see why they would do it. I mean, it does make
Yeah.
sense.
Do you see like how that could work the opposite way though? Like you like again you
Good.
tease the viewer and then like you don't
Yep,
deliver on what you say.
100%.
And then when you advertise it as a first time ever matchup, you have the fans are like, "Wait a minute. That's not the first time." Cuz you have the fans who have the Rolodex in their mind and they categorize
Yeah.
everything. So again,
Oh
it's like one
yeah.
of those risky things that happen.
100%. 100%. But hey, listen, you know, and I see it from Stone Cold's point of view as well, where it's like, well, wait a second, you're costing me a payday. So, yeah, but once again, Richie, I've never been in the locker
hmm
room, so again, this is just my opinion, your
Right.
opinion, and someone else's. But I always find these stories are so interesting. The backstories makes you wonder how many other backstories that there are. So,
And
but let's
and the other theory,
let's get back.
there's one more
I
theory.
was, yeah, I was gonna that well, I was about to throw it back to you and say what let's get back to another
Yep. So
theory.
the other theory is Jesse Ventura, Governor
Mm-hmm.
Jesse Ventura, is the special
Mm-hmm.
referee. And if hypothetically
Correct.
Triple H were to win, it wouldn't really make
Mm-hmm.
sense for the babyface celebrity to raise the hand of the hated heel.
Which makes you wonder what was the whole purpose of this to begin with.
Correct.
You know?
So there's a lot to go on. And plus, like at No Mercy, Triple H did pin Steve Austin.
Yeah,
So I'm not
but
sure if like I could buy like Stone Cold didn't want to put Triple H over.
because it makes you from what you've seen, and what makes sense, it sure looks like Triple H isn't the one who's going
Mhm.
over. You know, Governor Ventura is going to raise the hands of the babyface champion.
Mhm.
Which is Stone
And
Cold.
that's what makes your celebrity look good too. You get associated with a
Yes,
babyface.
correct. You
It's
know,
just not the babyface that I think fans had in mind.
No, definitely not. Which makes you wonder, when we get to the end game, what was the whole purpose of it? But we'll get
Yep.
there.
So let's ride into SummerSlam, shall we?
Hmm?
So Jesse Ventura has 3 different backstage segments, same exact
Mm-hmm.
verbiage of telling each of the competitors it's going to be 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring.
Yes, correct.
Now, I usually like these kind of like backstage like segments, kind of like tie, like being like a narrative story that's being tied in together throughout the pay per view.
Mm-hmm.
But with Jesse Ventura, besides with Triple H, we didn't really have like that one-on-one promo with Mankind and Jesse, or Stone Cold and
No,
Jesse. Do you think that
no,
hurt the
but
match?
well, I mean, you did have again. He was very, he was very adamant in putting China in her
Hmm.
place and telling her she's not going to get
Hmm.
involved. And we're going to have a clean
Hmm.
fight. He's very adamant on that.
Right.
But we didn't see, and it's funny because I watched this again this morning. There was no one-on-one time with Jesse and the other two competitors. So could that have just been something that was forgotten about? I don't know. You know, I would think that's just one of some of the details. The crossing of the T's and the dotting of the I's that may have just gotten past somebody, or maybe for time's
Right.
sake, it got taken off. I don't know. Um, I mean, I'm looking at the card right here. I mean, it was a pretty big
Hmm.
card. D'Lo Brown and Jeff Jarrett for the European title. He had a tag team championship match. Tag team number 1 contender match, right? With you have Draws and Prince Albert versus Christian and Edge versus the Acolytes versus the Hardys versus the Hollies versus the Corporate Ministry,
Hmm.
right? With Midian and Viscera. You have Al Snow and the Big Boss Man for the hardcore title. You have Ivory and Tori for the women's world championship. Shamrock and Steve Blackman are going at it. Shane McMahon versus Test. Kane and X Pac defending their tag team championship against the Big Show and the Undertaker. You know, the Kiss My Ass match with The Rock and Billy Guns. I mean, there was a lot going
And
on
you
that
also
night.
had a Chris Jericho promo a couple of weeks after he debuted.
Yeah,
So it's like that
you
is a
know.
pretty stacked show.
So it could just be that maybe they just didn't have the time to throw those interviews in with Jesse and the other two, and they just focused on the confrontation with Jesse and China.
It just kind of bewilders me that Steve Austin, who's the hottest person in this company at this
Oh yeah,
point, is
oh yeah, the Austin
a
Bomb.
complete non-factor in the build-up to this match.
He's a non-factor in the build-up of the match, and he's a non-factor until he comes out for the
Hmm.
match. They didn't even have any. They had no interviews with. Forget about an interview with Jesse. They didn't even have an interview with him before the match at all.
Which is so
So,
weird because he's coming off a story where he can never challenge for the WWF Championship again, and now
mhm.
he's just an island onto his own. Granted, he could just be resting some injuries, but again, even when Steve was injured, he was still a main fixture on the television show.
Yeah,
And it just kind of seems like they didn't know what to do with him here.
no, it's true. 1 second. So let's not forget too. You know, let's just rewind a
Hmm.
second. You know how that whole stipulation got reversed,
Hmm.
right? You know, this was the because things got, remember I said at the beginning, stipulations got reversed a lot. And this was the time where, wasn't this the I was gonna double check my knowledge of this. You know, um, wasn't this the time where after the match?
Hmm.
No, that's the row. Forget. I'm talking at my I'm 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 thinking of the Royal Rumble where you have Commissioner Austin, Commissioner Michaels, and Austin sharing a drink together. That was after the Royal Rumble. After Vince won the Royal Rumble. So
Right.
that was earlier in the year. And Mills Lane, he came out and reversed the decision as well. Was that this, or was that a couple months earlier
A
as
couple
well,
months earlier,
or
I
later?
believe.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what this goes back to what we were talking about before. There was so many twists and turns in every story they were doing. It just makes it hard to go back and remember this stuff right
Hmm.
now. Um, but at the time, it's almost like you expected
Yeah,
it.
and do you think that kind of hurts the not the story
The only thing
itself,
that
but
hurts,
do you think that hurts on the rewatch?
well, I don't know if it hurts on the rewatch. It's so much as it just, when you're making a stipulation, who really cares about the stipulation when it's probably going to get taken away and rescinded at some point.
Right.
So I don't think the fans were taking the stipulation
Mm.
seriously
And,
because they're going to get changed.
yeah, there's always going to be like some loophole and stuff.
Yeah.
But going back to Steve and the lack of attention on him,
Hmm.
when you're the champion, you should be the most important part of
Yeah.
the story.
Well, and he, if I remember correctly, too, he was he was doing guest commentary during that Mankind and Triple H match on
Mhm.
Raw. But again, he wasn't. There really wasn't much other involvement, so it makes you wonder: was he healthy?
Right. And
You
it
know,
kind of
was he
it does
healthy?
kind of draw parallels to again recency biased here, the WrestleMania buildup where Roman was seemingly taking a back seat to The Rock during this whole time. And when your champion is taking a back seat to the build, it does make him seem less important. But with Steve Austin, he was such an important fixture of WWF during that time period that it seemed like they could go as far as they could with this version of the Steve Austin character because he already defeated
Mhm.
his biggest adversary in Vince McMahon, who had to leave WWF, and that was the big goal. So Steve
Yes.
Austin could have WWF to clear out his run. The problem is with that, what do you do with the hero when he doesn't have that comparable villain to go after?
Yeah. What happens when Superman doesn't have Lex Luthor anymore,
Mhm.
right?
And now, even though it's a short time period, so we'll go from Steve Austin post fully loaded till he gets taken out at Survivor Series. Now, granted, Vince comes back, but Vince comes out back
Hmm.
as a babyface. When you go through that
Correct.
period of time of Steve Austin, do you think he lost a little bit of a spark or momentum during that whole entire period? I know he was injured during that time, but do you think character wise that he kind of like lost steam?
I don't. I mean, just judging from, again, listening to the when I was rewatching it before, listening to the Austin pop, I don't think he lost any popularity. You know, storyline wise, he might have lost a little bit just of
Hmm.
momentum. I think he definitely loses momentum after the SummerSlam match. Um, but I mean, in the eyes of the fans, myself, and just listening to the pop that he received, I don't think people were like, "Oh, it's Stone Cold," or it was, yeah, it's Stone Cold, and the place went nuts when he came out. So, I don't think him not being active that whole time. I don't think it really had too much of a effect on his popularity.
Right. And just going into the match itself, like this match kind of
Mhm.
gives me, not in a bad way, it kind of gives me house show vibes. If you ever been to like a house show or live event,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
like you'll get like a lot of like old school kind of stuff because during the match, Triple H will hit Austin or Mankind with the chair, and Jesse does the point with the
Does
chair,
he doesn't refuses the count?
refuses the count, and
Hmm.
then you have Jesse asking the crowd if Triple H cheated. You have Jesse
Hmm.
shunning China back. It felt
Yep.
very. It didn't feel like your Attitude Era esque match. It felt like
It,
something was a little bit off.
it was missing a lot of the hard hits that we were used to.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it was the story because like WWF at the time was very big storyline driven, and arguably out of
Mhm.
the entire year of 1999, this build was probably the weakest a main event had.
It. I don't know. Again, I've never been in the
Yep.
locker room. I don't know. But I mean, you have Mick Foley coming back from the knee injury. Stone Cold does have the bad neck. It's almost like these guys were out there, and they were, hey, listen, let's just take it easy on each
Mhm.
other, and go and we'll get Jesse involved and let Jesse have his spots. He'll throw out China. He'll bump heads with Triple H, but it's almost like, yeah, it wasn't your hard hitting match that we were used to. And I can't even blame it on a six
Mhm.
man. I'm sorry, on a triple threat, because we have a triple threat the following year. You
Yeah.
know, with the Rock and Kurt Angle and Triple H, that was so hard hitting that Kurt Angle had a concussion 2 minutes into the
And to be
match.
fair, that was more like a one-on-one match. Kurt Angle got
Yeah,
ridden out like very early on.
but again, it was hard
Correct.
hitting,
Yeah.
so it makes you wonder, did these guys have a little chat before the match and just like, listen, we're gonna go through the
Hmm.
motions, because no, it was not that hard hit, other than the chair shots, from Triple H, during the match and then after the match on Austin. Those were the biggest hits of the night.
And let's talk about Triple H, the character, at this point, because just still Chris in the
Hmm.
game, but he doesn't have that cerebral assassin kind of character yet. He's
Not
just
yet.
kind of
No.
still transitioning to the Hunter Hearst Helmsley to Triple H. And
He's
I
got he's
remember
got his
I
new theme
remember
song.
JR was trying to get Try over at this time, if you remember.
Yeah,
Try. That was his
he's got
that was
he's got it. Listen, he's got his new theme
mhm,
song. He's got his he's got his little chains that it comes down with around his neck, like almost Scott Steiner like, just not on his
right.
head. He's got a whole new look. He's not wearing pants anymore. He's wearing the
Mhm.
trunks. So, it's a whole new Triple H. Whole new He's the new character.
And it feels like
You know?
he's just kind of experimenting at this point and seeing what sticks as
Could be.
his main event character. S-
It could be.
So, do you think at this time, with Triple H still figuring out this new character, do you think it was right for him to be in this main event spot? Because the fans seemingly like they're booing him, but it feels like they're booing him because they have to, not because they want to, because he hasn't done any really devious deeds in comparison of what he would do in the future.
Again, I didn't notice that when I was watching it today.
Mhm.
You know, um, you know, he was getting the responses you'd hope he was going to
Right.
get. Jesse, and part of it was him butting heads with Jesse Ventura
Hmm.
too. It's almost like, when I was watching it before, it almost seemed like the feud wasn't even Triple H and Stone Cold. It was more Triple H and Governor Ventura.
Right.
Was almost like the real feud right there.
Hmm.
So, then you have Stone Cold and Mankind in there as like the just two other guys that have in the match. But those are two guys that at this point are almost like taking it easy. So, yeah, things get a little wonky, in this match. But I don't think it was a question of you know Triple H, am I supposed to boo him or not? I don't think that was so much. I just there were a lot of moving
Hmm.
parts. Is kind of what I took away from it.
And let's talk
Um,
about more of the
and
wars.
almost like too many moving parts.
Mhm.
Sorry,
No,
almost like too many moving
but yeah,
parts.
let's talk about a couple of those moving parts because you had
Hmm.
Mankind, whose return should be a big deal. He's kind of thrown into the mix right here. You have Steve
Hmm.
Austin, who again is kind of coming on the come down of not having that chief rival anymore. You have Triple H, who has this new character going on. And then you have Jesse Ventura making his first WWF appearance in years. And you're blending
Yeah,
all this up, and there's a lot of like ups, there's a lot of downs. And during the match, you also got some Triple H and Mankind team up spots, which I found was
hmm
very peculiar because it was
yeah.
like Mankind got taken out by Triple H, but now they're kind of working together to take out Austin.
But then at one point you have Mankind and Austin working together against Triple H. Especially at the beginning of the match, and Mankind goes to hug his former tag team partner, and he gets a punch to the face for his for his thank you. So there was a lot of there definitely wasn't too much friendly moments in this match. They did try to build it up to every man for
Mhm.
himself.
And do you think in this moment where triple threat matches, especially for the WWF title, were very uncommon in this period of time? I want to
Hmm.
say this is probably the first one on pay per view, maybe, if I'm remembering correctly. Or oh no, like they had Stone Cold, Taker, and Kane before, but it's like this is like the first one on like a major show, like one of the
Right.
big four. So do you think that kind of like distracted from the crowd reaction because you have all these elements involved and Jesse Ventura as well?
Again, I think that, like there's a lot going on,
Mhm.
and clearly the focus was not on just two people. You
Right.
know, it just was a lot going on. It And again, I would love to be able to one day ask the guys who put this match together, like, what were their thoughts?
Mhm.
You know, because again, watching it, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about now, 25 years later, I didn't even notice at the time. As a fan, I was like, dude, I got Stone Cold, I got Triple H, I got Mankind, I got Jesse Ventura, all in the same match. You know, I was
Mhm.
happy. You know, um, I was more shocked by the outcome.
So let's talk about the outcome right now.
Okay.
So first we got to talk about one of the most infamous spots in this match where Shane
Mm-hmm.
McMahon interferes. Jesse
Yeah.
Ventura gets physical, throws Shane out, and he says, "That was for
Uh,
your old
well,
man."
after a stunner to
Correct.
Shane, and then Stone Cold basically gives Jesse the body of the signal. He says, stand him up, throw him out. So Jesse picks him up, throws him over the ropes. The man still got it, and then he says,
That was
you
for
know
your old man.
you
Yep.
bastard. He calls him a bastard too.
And then
Yep.
the thing
Mm-hmm.
is, Steve Austin, he was on the rope talking trash, but Jesse
Yep.
leans on the ropes,
Mm-hmm.
which causes Steve Austin to get tied up in the ropes.
Up the
And it's
ropes.
like this awkward camera shot where it's like they're trying to make sure like they're not
Yes.
catching Steve in this embarrassing
Yeah.
situation. And Steve
Yeah.
tells it
Get the camera off him.
and Steve tells it on his podcast where he was trying to call like Mick, but Mick's no longer. And then he sees Jesse. He's like, Jesse's still into it. So then he can't
Yeah.
ask Triple H because Triple H is the heel, but Triple H sees what's going
Yeah.
on and then has
Yeah.
to help Austin out. They actually had this spot similar like when Damian Priest got his leg caught with Drew
Mm-hmm.
McIntyre. But Drew actually played it off well, saying he can't win the championship that way. But the problem is, in this match right here, it's a triple threat match.
Right.
So it
Yes.
doesn't make
So what are you
sense.
gonna do?
So let's go to
Like,
the finish. So Triple H hits the pedigree on Austin. Mankind
mm-hmm.
breaks it up. And then Mankind hits his double arm DDT finisher that he was
Yes.
using sparingly at this time. It wasn't like his go to, that was like
Yep.
the mandible claw. But he,
They were in the center. Well, I think it's also
yep,
important to note location of our body. He gives him the double arm DDT in the center of the ring. No more than 3 feet away to Triple H, who's lying on his
mhm,
back. After just getting pushed off the pin.
right.
So it's not like he hit Triple H with a double arm DDT as
Yeah, he
well.
just broke it up like, the forearm shot,
Yes.
and then Triple H is out for the rest of the match in time.
Yeah. Yeah. Because now Mankind goes for the cover after the DDT. Jesse counts a normal count, normal pace.
One,
1, 2,
right.
3. It's almost like Triple H is like, wait, what? Was I supposed to break something up? Like, wait, hold on.
And the crowd's kind of
That
like,
that that just Yeah.
it's like they were like, oh yeah, we do like this guy. They were kind of confused at first.
Well, I remember watching it, and I was telling you this before. I was like, wait, Stone Cold just got pinned cleanly. Like, if you would have asked me back in 1999, I would have totally took. My prediction would have been, yeah, Mankind's in this match because he's the one who's going to get
Mhm.
pinned. Not that he's. I never would have guessed that it would have been, good guy pinning good
Yeah,
guy with, you know, and it was clean too. There wasn't even any kind of
yeah, and
chicanery.
it was very bizarre because
Very.
like there are again couple theories like we were talking about. Another one was that it was leaked that Triple H would win, and they wanted to
Yep.
surprise the fans. But again,
Which
I
is
still like the theory that you can't have the governor raising the hand of the heel champion at the end of the show.
so then why don't you just have Stone Cold retain?
And then that goes into like if Stone Cold was injured at this point, which
Yeah,
looking at the
you got to
couple
wonder.
pay-per-views afterwards, when they had the ref on strike storyline
Hmm.
where he played the
Yeah,
referee during that match and not was
I
one of
mean,
the
listen.
participants.
You figure it's a year after his match with Owen
Hmm.
Hart, where he hurt his neck. It was a SummerSlam the year
Hmm.
before. We know that a few months from now he's going to be you know attacked backstage once again. He'll be hit by a
Yeah.
car, and that he'll be out for a year when he has his neck surgery. So, I mean, common sense. And again, for the listeners, Richie and I, we don't know. We've never talked to Stone Cold about this or anyone, but common sense would lead you to believe that, dude, he's not feeling good, and maybe he's going to take a little time
Hmm.
off.
And do you think with the car happening? that was the right way to write Austin off, because they were, as the story goes, like they just wrote that and they're like, oh, we'll figure out the end game later.
Well, Rikishi did it for The
Yeah.
Rock.
That's a podcast we need to do.
Yeah, I did it for The Rock.
But this whole match, like the
It
whole
does
vibe was just weird.
Yeah, and going back, to what one of the other theories, from what we were talking about before, with the, Austin didn't want to drop the title to Triple H. I mean, it almost seems like he handed it to Mick Foley.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, listen, if I got to drop this title tonight, fine, I'm giving it to him, not him.
And let's talk about like the aftermath that happened, because one, this is Mick's last time as WWF champion.
Pretty much.
And he loses it,
24 hours later.
And this is Triple H's first reign as WWF champion.
And he's going to win it on Raw and not at a major pay-per-view.
What was your reaction to this? Did you think I'm like this is kind of like
a
a wasted
weird
opportunity to help build like the new heel, or did you think like this is like another like pivot?
And again, this is you go back in time. My friends and I we'd watch this stuff and we'd be like, "Wait, why do you think this happened? What just happened?" And we just figured at the time, they just wanted to keep us guessing.
Mm-hmm.
Like clearly the original plan was for Triple H, to get that title, but they just wanted they wanted to keep us guessing. Right. That's why he didn't win it at SummerSlam, and that's why Mick Foley's reign was only 24 hours, if it even was 24 hours.
And like I said before, this is Mick's last run as WWF champion. Did you?
It was almost like,
and this
it was almost like they called him up.
Amount of time, like all his runs.
Yeah, like ring, hey, listen, Mick, we need you at SummerSlam. How you feeling? We're gonna give you the title, but don't worry, you don't have to defend it. You're gonna lose it the next night, so you can then rest up a little bit afterwards.
Yeah,
like with all the pieces that were involved in this match, I mean, it almost seems like, if you really wanted to go for shock value, should have kept Chyna in the match and let her win it. Right? Like, Mick Foley came out of nowhere.
So that was pretty much the SummerSlam matchup debacle with Triple H getting this championship after many twists and turns.
You call it a debacle. I just look at it as they just wanted to keep us on our toes.
Seth, you gotta admit, it could have been a lot simpler.
It could have been. I mean, you say debacle. I don't think it's the worst SummerSlam main event ever.
No, it's not the worst SummerSlam main event, but it's the one that is really kind of hard to keep track of if you think about it.
It is hard to keep track of. I'll give you that one.
It's just like
But I mean, hey, listen. This year's WrestleMania what had a lot of twists and turns too.
It had one twist and turn, and that was it.
There were a couple of twists and turns. You had a tag team match involved at night one. You had some people getting involved, and then generously giving their spot away. I mean, there was a lot going on.
Yeah, and that is
we're not going to get
that is a different podcast.
Yes.
If you want to hear, even before when Cody stepped aside to that podcast, Seth and I, we were a part of a panel to discuss whether Cody Rhodes was the right guy to main event or The Rock was the right guy to main event. Turns out we were both kind of right.
Yeah, I mean, listen. It almost seems like everyone was involved at that point.
But this one, in comparison to the WrestleMania 40, those people had like a storyline reason for being involved.
Yes.
With this right here, with this match build, let's count out the number of supporting players and main players in this. You have the governor of Minnesota, Jesse the Body Ventura. Mm-hmm. You have Stone Cold Champ, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Shane McMahon, Shawn Michaels, Mankind, Undertaker, Chyna, Triple H. Like you have
8 people.
All these people, and arguably only 4 need to be in there.
True. You can't say that 4. You can't say they kept people off TV. They gave everybody a shot.
Even though it's just like I don't think it really helped anybody in the long run. Like Triple H, he did get the WWF Championship, but it didn't really mean as much as it could have been.
True. And I think, and that's always been my one thing is that, you said it before. We all know I'm a Triple H
Mhm,
guy. He's one of my all time favorites, as is Stone Cold,
mhm,
right? But you know, listen, Stone Cold's first world championship was at WrestleMania. He had his WrestleMania
mhm.
moment. We had our whole long argument, earlier this year about how you know Cody Rhodes has to have his moment at WrestleMania.
Mhm.
And I remember saying at the time, and if anyone wants to go back on the pod and listen, hey, what's the big deal if Cody wins the championship on Raw? Triple H won his first world championship on Raw too. I mean, so you know, looking at back at it that way, all right, listen, he had a Hall of Fame career.
Mhm.
He's a he's had double digit championship reigns. Um, he was the face of the company for a number of years as champion, but his first championship didn't come on a main pay per view. You know, it came on a Monday Night Raw. So the question is, does that take away from the victory, or does that just show you that Raw was pretty important back then? Because there were a lot of title changes on Raw.
Mhm.
So I mean, you could look at it. Depends. Perception is reality. So, me, I like to just tell myself Raw was pretty important back then, and as Vince used to say, anything could happen in the WWE.
I see your point. However,
So,
this was at a period of time
yes.
where the championships, not just the WWF championship, but championships in general, would flip
Mm-hmm.
flop back and forth on either Raw,
All the time.
SmackDown.
Hmm.
We're even going to get a title change not even a month after with Vince McMahon winning the championship from Triple
That's
H.
right. That's right.
So
And
it seems like
you want to talk about
it
some?
was the sake of switching the championship just to switch the championship rather than the
Or,
moment being billed or for it to further a story.
well, I mean, if anything, though, I mean, it's going to further the Triple H and Triple H and Stone Cold rivalry a little bit too, because if I remember correctly, you know, Vince won that title after Stone Cold came down and gave a stunner to Triple H.
Correct.
So I mean, just like he helped McFoley win against The Rock.
Mhm.
So you know um, it's gonna be but it's gonna be wonky.
Mhm.
Seeing Vince holding that championship belt is always pretty good, but it did lead again. It didn't really lead to a Triple H and Stone Cold feud. I mean, it did. They had their
Mhm.
match. But their match came, if you remember, their match came, you know, early the next year. I want to say it was at No Way Out, but it wasn't even at WrestleMania. They because at WrestleMania 17, um, no, sorry, 16,
So,
right?
so
WrestleMania
what
16.
happened? They had
Yeah.
a match at No Mercy '99,
Yep.
and then when
Mm-hmm.
Stone Cold returned, they did have a match at Survivor Series. That was the one where
Series. Yep.
Triple H
Yeah.
got lifted up in that
Correct.
forklift thingy with the car,
Forklift
where
thingy,
Triple H should have been dead, but he survived.
and they,
And then
and they did have a match.
they had the No
I
Way
was
Out
gonna
match, Three Stages of
match
Hell.
right before WrestleMania
Mhm.
17.
Eh,
I think that was right before WrestleMania 17, which is before right which is the WrestleMania where Stone Cold has his heel
mhm.
turn and aligns himself infamously with Vince McMahon
And I'll
and
tell you the
eventually
reason
becomes
why
tag team
that
partners.
happened allegedly.
Well, and I was just going to say, just to tie this
Yeah.
together, he ends up becoming tag team partners with Stone
Mhm.
Cold as the two-man power trip.
And I'll tell
So
you why that happened allegedly, like that victory of Triple H. Because why would Triple H pin the winner of the Rumble?
that's a good question.
Because it was going to be heel Austin versus babyface Triple H. But Seth,
Hmm.
you know as well as I do, if Stone Cold Steve Austin, the biggest star of wrestling, turns heel, he ain't dropping that championship right away.
No,
So
not at all.
Triple H thought, allegedly, hey, I'd rather team with the number one heel than just constantly being the punching bag of the number one heel.
The number one heel. Yeah.
And then he
I mean,
tore his
listen,
quad.
that's yeah. He tears his quad, and the two-man power trip ends, and Triple H will come back as a babyface the following
Right.
year. And eventually we'll have the alliance and the invasion angle.
I can't get
And
into
well,
that.
no, not tonight, not tonight. And then we'll get babyface Austin back. Once Vince knocks out the alliance and resumes his feud with Austin. So
So let's go back to the SummerSlam main event
yes,
build.
let's do so.
Uh, I want you to grade the build to the main event, the match itself, and the long
Okay.
term impact.
So okay, so am I am I looking at this now in 2024 and giving it a review,
Let's look
or
at it
am I
through
doing
the
this
eyes of 2024, Seth.
because I was going to say, I mean, listen, at the time, if you would have said to me, "Hey, did you watch SummerSlam last night?" I'd be like, "Yeah, did you like it?" I'd be like, "I loved it." What wasn't to love? You know, Looking back at it now after rewatching a lot of these clips, in the last 2 days,
Mhm.
yeah, it was a little wonky. Um, Clearly not the worst SummerSlam. Um, you know, Things don't really make. Again, I was still shocked even when I watched it earlier today. Even knowing how the match was going to end, I still was a little shocked that Mankind got the clean pin on Stone
Mhm.
Cold. You know, you know, it definitely it was a little anticlimactic at the end. Because you're expecting either Stone Cold to kick out or Triple H to interrupt the pin,
Mhm.
and you just get a 1, 2, 3 really easily. So if you had asked me back in 1999, I would be like, dude, 4-star main event. I'm not giving it 4 stars now.
Mhm.
You know, the players involved were three popular players plus Governor Ventura. I mean, I'll give it at least a 3 rating, just because of the people
3 out of
involved.
5.
3 out of 5. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because if I would have given it 4 stars, I would have 4 out of 5 as well. So I'll say 3, 3.5 even. Out of 5. It's not, like I said, it's not the worst. I just, for me, it's just going to be the way it was just almost like anticlimactic, and it was just a little like, whoa, what just
Mhm.
happened? Almost like the Undertaker, losing his streak. Like, whoa, did he just lose?
Seth, thank you so much for joining. And you're actually going to this year's SummerSlam.
I
Do you
am.
have any
I
hot
am.
predictions or hot takes of what we heard so far about the matches?
I'm hoping, like I said, will the tribal chief be there? I'm sure he's going to make an appearance at some point. Whether it's at the end of a match, because I can't see him returning this week or next
Mhm.
week. Um, we'll see what happens there, or maybe he comes back, on Raw the night after. Who knows? I'm looking forward to a couple of things. I'm looking forward to obviously Cody and Solo. I think I love I love this new bloodline, man. I love comparing it to like NWO and NWO Black and White versus NWO Black and
Mhm.
Red, because eventually at some point, Roman's coming back and both Usos are going to be with him. I don't know how we're going to get there, because Jay seems to have a good push going on Raw, but Jay's going to be in Roman's bloodline. So eventually the two bloodlines are going to clash. Although I was thinking about this the other day when I was driving home. We assume that's going to happen, but what if Roman's bloodline and the new bloodline combine, and you have one sick ass bloodline that's just unstoppable too? So you know, we're assuming they're gonna fight with each other, but who knows? That's the beauty of it. So I can't wait for that. You know, the I can't see Gunther not winning that
Mhm.
championship. You know, I can't see him losing two major shows in a
Right.
row. So, you know, I'm definitely psyched to see to see Gunther win, but at the same time, I don't know if I'm ready for Damian Priest to lose yet either. I kind of like Damian Priest as a champion. Um, the match so far that I'm looking forward to the most though is Mommy, and just looking at the ass kicking that she's going to be throwing down, and how Liv is going to torture Dominic a little bit more, which I think is probably one of the most entertaining things as well. So, like I said, I'm so involved in these stories these days. I'm loving it. So It's
So,
gonna be good. We got a couple good things on the horizon too, but I can't see Gunther not being the championship champion going into that Berlin show unless he's going into the Berlin show in a rematch fashion because somehow got screwed. So, but I can't see him not main eventing in Berlin.
well, Seth, I hope you have a fantastic time at SummerSlam. I can't wait to hear all about your adventures in Cleveland.
Nah, good
And
times.
once you come back here on the pod, we'll have a couple new topics to go over because
Can't
I
wait.
always love talking wrestling with you, Seth, because at the end of the day, it's always a good conversation. That's what the wrestling community needs and I feel like prefers
I think
when
so.
happened to show that
Yeah,
we are both level headed guys.
and that's why we work out so well together, Richie.
Absolutely. This
So,
has been Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. You can follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Retold Richie Mars. TTFN, ta ta for now, and we will see you next time.